So here's the deal. You get to see me via YouTube because I'm not there. I am sorry, I just can't be there today, and I really want to actually. But, you know, it just doesn't happen that way. So here's the deal. There's a worksheet that you need to do. Either this worksheet was given to you in a hard copy form, which is like, I don't know, 15 something questions, 2 sections, legislative branch, executive branch, or you can see this online via Google Classroom and your email that I sent you. Either way, you're answering all these questions, and you're going to email me the answers. Okay? I'm going to go over the legislative branch, and I'm going to go over the executive branch with you. As I'm going over them, understand I am not going in any kind of order, but I am going to answer all the questions, or at least hope I will. So you might have to rewind and listen to this thing multiple times, but let's get right into it. The legislative branch. It's in Article 1 of the Constitution. And the legislative branch, its job is to make the laws. And if you don't know that, you need to know that. It makes the laws. It's also one of the most important branches because it's in Article 1, which means the founders thought this was so important it needs to be the first thing that we write about. Think of it like the amendments. What's amendment number 1? Freedom of speech, religion. It's one of the most important ones. That's why they put it as number 1. So it makes the laws. And it's also 2 houses that make up the legislative branch. What makes up the legislative branch? 2 houses. One is the Senate, and the other one is the House of Representatives. They make up the entirety of the legislative branch. And what do? They make the laws. The laws are super important because without those, the executive branch can't enforce the laws, and the judicial branch can't interpret the law. So it kind of starts with the legislative branch. Let's keep going along. So the 2 houses, House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives, each state gets a number of representatives based on population. Our state is the 5th largest state in the United States. Therefore, we have more House members than that of like Wyoming or North Carolina and other things. So how it works is there's 435 members total in the House, and those 435 members represent the state to which they are there for. While they're there, they try to listen to the constituents, us, to make laws that better us and the country as a whole. At least that's the whole idea. The leader of the House is a person called the Speaker of the House, and the Speaker of the House is Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House, and Nancy Pelosi is also second in line to become president, not first in line. First in line to become president is the Vice President, Kamala Harris. But if Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were both to pass away at the same time, Nancy Pelosi would become the president of the United States. She is that second person in line. Third person in line is President Pro Tem, but we'll get to that later. The House can actually make bills, or they're the first body, the first House that can actually pass bills that deal with money. So if it has any law that they're trying to make that deals with money, has to start in the House. Speaking of the House and Representatives, you are in District 17 in Illinois. So Illinois, like all the other states, are broken up into districts. Districts are basically these areas where we vote for one representative from our district to represent us. And you're in District 17. So if you look at a map and you type in Google districts of Illinois, you'll come up with all these numbers of all these different districts, and you are in 17. I am not in 17. I believe I am in 16 because I'm in DeKalb. I'm in a different district. That's where I live. So your representative's name is a woman named Sherry Bustos. And Sherry Bustos has been represented for a little while, and she is representative of District 17 to which you live. So when you vote for your House members, you actually will be voting for her or against her, or maybe it'll be completely different candidates by the time you get to vote when you're 18. Because remember, one important thing about the House is they only serve 2-year terms, which means every 2 years, House members have to go up for re-election and try to get their seat back. If they don't, they get voted out. They're no longer a representative. So only 2-year terms. That means they're being re-elected all the time. So as we go through this, I want you to keep this in mind. This happens in all the other states. States are broken up into districts, and sometimes this causes complications because each district can be drawn in very weird ways. This is called gerrymandering, and it may not be a term on your sheet, but it has to do with the idea of drawing lines to benefit specific political parties, and both parties tend to do this. So it's one of those things where it's not so good. All right, requirements. There are 3 requirements to be in the House. You have to be at least 25 years old. You have to have been a citizen for at least 7 years, and you have to live in the state that you represent. So, the state that you represent makes a lot of sense because why would you be a representative of a state that you don't live in? So that just makes sense. The 7 years citizen means you don't actually have to be a natural born citizen. You could just be a citizen that gets their citizenship through the naturalization process, taking the test whatsoever, but you have to be at least 7 years a citizen to do this. And 25 years of age is actually pretty young compared to the other requirements. So that is the House. It's 435 members, 2-year terms. You have to be at least 25 years old, 7 years a citizen, and live in the state that you're in. You live in District 17, and your representative is Sherry Bustos. Part of the legislative branch is also the Senate. The Senate is a whole different beast. Instead of having the senators based on population, each state, regardless of their size, gets 2 senators. So even Wyoming, who has, and again, I'm ballparking here, around 500 to 600,000 people, they get 2 senators. And California, which has millions and millions and millions of people, they also get just 2 senators. So every state gets 2 senators, which gives you a grand total of 100 senators in all. We have 50 states, times that by 2, and you get 100. We have 100 senators. So the Senate, the lead of the Senate, the president of the Senate, if you will, is actually the vice president. So the vice president is the leader of the Senate. And our vice president is Kamala Harris. Her main job as vice president is to cast a tie-breaking vote. So if the Senate were to ever vote and they get a tie, a 50-50 split, which by the way now is really possible because we have 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans in the Senate, she will make the tiebreaker vote. To be a senator, the qualifications are a little bit higher. So to be a senator, you have to be at least 30 years of age. You have to be a citizen for at least 9 years, and you have to live in the state that you are, representing, which by the way, is the same requirement for the House as far as living in the state, which just makes a whole lot of sense. So that is the legislative branch in a nutshell. It makes the laws. It has 2 houses, the Senate and the House. You have to pass a law through both houses in order to actually pass a bill into both houses to actually go to the president's desk to be signed, and then that becomes a law. And let's talk about how a bill becomes a law just real quickly. So you have the House that will vote on a bill, which is like a baby law. In order to make it to an adult law, it has to pass the House, and then it goes to the Senate. And if it passes the Senate, then it goes to the president. And if the president votes for it, then it becomes a law. If the president doesn't vote for it, he can do this thing called a veto. And a veto basically is I don't think so. And he can stop a bill from becoming a law that way. If he does the veto with his little hand up, it's going to go back to the Senate and the House, and they can actually override that veto. They can basically say, put your hand down. And if they override the veto, they need 2/3 of their votes. So in other words, you have 435 members of the House. 2/3 of them have to vote against the president's veto, and then it goes to the Senate, and as long as 2/3 of the 100 members, that's like 67 people, vote against the president's veto, it becomes a law regardless of what the president wants. Which brings us to the next number you need to know. There's 100 members in the Senate, and there's 435 members of the House. Together, Congress has 535 members total. So don't get those mixed up. So the House has a lot, it's 435. The Senate has a little, which is 100. You put them together, all of Congress together is 535. Also, the word Congress is another word for the legislative branch. So you might see questions on the quiz or the test about what does Congress do and what does the legislative branch do. That's the same thing. They make the laws. Okay, so that should be the first portion of your worksheet. Now that you have that done, you can focus on the second portion of your worksheet, which is the executive branch. And I will be in class to teach you this stuff as well, but this is a good review before we get into this because you're going to know this for the Constitution test as well as the quizzes that you'll be taking for these different units. So the executive branch, what's happening there? First thing you need to know is the executive branch, they enforce the laws. So although the legislative branch makes the laws, just because you make a law, if you don't enforce it, it doesn't matter, right? So like if I made a law in the class that you can only talk when I raise my right hand and I never enforce that that law in the class, like you talk without me raising my right hand, then what good is the law, right? So laws need to be enforced, and that's what the executive branch does. This is like your military. This is even like your police department or FBI agents. They're all part of the big circle of enforcers or the executive branch. Their goal is to go in and to make sure whatever law was passed by Congress gets enforced. So if you break the law, you know where you're going. And it basically is a protection against any law that gets passed by Congress. So who's the head of the executive branch? Well, that's the president. And our president is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is our 46th president, and our vice president is Kamala Harris, and she's the first female vice president. And if let's imagine something happens to Joe Biden, he passes away in office, Kamala Harris will take over. If Kamala Harris passes away and Joe Biden passes away or resigns, then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi will take over. And if all three of them pass away or resign, then a person named President Pro Tempore, I'm going to say Pro Temp because I can't talk, Pro Temp, a guy named Patrick Leahy would become president. He's like the third in line. So it goes President dies, VP, and then it's Speaker of the House, and then it's President Pro Temp, which is Patrick Leahy. But with that aside, let's get to the president's cabinet. So the president has this thing called a cabinet, and these are advisors. These are people that are going to go in and basically tell him advice on specific areas. He has a Secretary of Commerce, which deals with trade. He has a Secretary of Homeland Security, which deals with Homeland Security. He has a Secretary of State, a Secretary of Education, which deals with schools. So with all these secretaries in his cabinet, he gets information from them to drive policy. And and so far we've only had he will then decide what type of legislation he wants Congress to try to get passed. Legislation can get passed a few different ways. Either a constituent, which is a fancy word, which means you or I can actually like write our congressmen and congresswomen and say, hey, pass this law. Or you can have a House member or Senate member like just think of a law to make, or you can have the president that says you should make this law. And that's actually usually how it starts, is the president goes, this is the law that I want you to make, and then they just go from there. What are the requirements for being president? Well, in order to be president, you have to be a little bit older than the Senate, and you have to be a little bit even older than the House. So the House is 20 years old, the Senate is 25 years old for the House, there's 30 years old for the Senate, and it is 35 years old to be president. So you have to be 35 to be president. So I cannot be president yet. Yay, I guess, because I'm so young. I'm not really that young. But anyway, you have to be 35 to be president. So you also have to be a natural born citizen. So you can't like gain your citizenship. You have to be a natural born citizen either through yourself being born here in the United States or your parents being both born here in the United States, be a natural born citizen, or just one parent really. And you also have to live in the United States consecutively for 14 years, which means if I was born in the United States and I moved to Jamaica when I was 10 and I came back when I was 35, I still can't run for president yet because I have to be in the United States for a consecutive 14 years in a row in order to actually run for president and meet that requirement. I know. It has to do with the idea of you should know the people that you're going to be president for, and if you're out of the country for that long, you're not going to know them. So that's really the goal there. Trying to think of anything. Oh, yeah, terms. Make sure you know these numbers. They get 2 terms maximum, and that actually came with the idea of the 22nd Amendment. So the 22nd Amendment says the president gets 2 terms. And also the 12th Amendment says we vote for the vice president and the president at the same time. So think of 12 and 22, both presidential things. 12 is we vote for the president and vice president at the same time, and 22 is the second 2-term president. Each term is only 4 years long, so if you do the math there, they can serve a maximum of 8 years in office. 2 terms, each term 4 years long, 2 times 4 is 8. So that's the executive right there. I'm trying to think of anything else you need to know for the executive. You should know that he has power to veto laws. He appoints judges, which means the Supreme Court justices gets appointed by him. It gets approved by the Senate. He can be impeached. We've had 4.5 times where president's been impeached. You're like, what's the half? The half time was Nixon. Nixon was about to be impeached, and then he resigned. We had the other 4 times that actually were impeached was you had Johnson, Andrew Johnson, who was impeached. He was the first one impeached for breaking the Tenure of Office Act, which was a law that Senate passed. You had Bill Clinton for basically perjury, and you had Trump, who got 2 impeachments, one dealing with a phone call with Ukraine, and the other one dealing with the insurrection that took place on January 6th. So we had 4 impeachments. You should know about the Electoral College. We do not actually vote for president. We vote for people to vote for president. I know it sounds kind of strange, but that's how the Electoral College works, is each state is given a certain number of points based on their population. But every state gets 3 no matter what. So states like Wyoming, which has a very small population, gets a 3 electoral points, which means like states like California, who have a tremendous amount of population, they don't get as many points as they technically should based on their population, because Wyoming gets 3 when they really should only have 1, if that. Well, anyway, in Illinois, we have 20 electoral points. And when we vote for president through the Electoral College, we're actually not voting for president. What we're doing as citizens in November is going to the ballot box, and what we're doing is we're casting a vote for an elector. So if our state, which has about 10 million people in Illinois, if our state, let's say 5,000,001, vote for the president, or vote for one person for president, let's say Joe Biden. So 5,000,001 people vote for Joe Biden as president in Illinois. And 4,999,999 people voted for Trump. Well, even though that there was only a 2 vote difference between those 2 candidates, all 20 electoral points are going to go to Biden. It's a winner-take-all in 48 states. But then our electors, human beings that actually go to D.C., they cast their 20 points towards Biden because that's what the state said. They don't have to. They can actually vote for Trump if they wanted to, but they typically don't. And then those 20 points go towards the 20 points that it's needed, or towards the 270 points that is needed to win the presidency. I know it's very highly complicated, and I will talk about this more when I get back into the classroom. What you know right now is just the Electoral College. That's what actually votes for the president. Okay. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's pretty much it for the executive branch. Anything else that's on the worksheet that I did not talk about, that's what Google is for right now. Also, when you're done with this worksheet, I want you to send me the answers, either a picture of both sides of the worksheet, or you can type them up and send them that way via email. You will probably still have time because this video only took 17 minutes. I'm guessing that you're going to have to stop and pause it a bunch of times. That's why I gave you more time. But what I want you to do is I want you to study, study, study. Because on Friday, if I'm there or not there, which I definitely plan to be there, you will be taking a legislative branch quiz, which is that first section there. But that legislative branch quiz will also contain stuff for the amendments and birth of the Constitution. So remember the stuff like inalienable rights means rights that cannot be taken away. Remember your amendments, like 1 is freedom, 2 is guns, so on and so forth. So you will be taking that quiz on Friday, and my hope is I will be back there in school tomorrow, Thursday, to be able to actually walk you through some of the stuff that you need to know for the legislative branch. All right, guys. Peace out.